What's next for grades 4 and 5 in Clinton's public schools? Clinton's Board of Education meets and decides to vacate Pierson at the end of the school year 2018-19, relocating 4th grade to Joel and 5th grade to Eliot.
So the purpose of this agenda item tonight is to kind of have a chance to have a discussion for the board members around the table about the presentation, the work of the committee, any questions you might still have, and kind of to build a consensus on what actions we as a board would like to take regarding our use of facilities in our lower grades. So really we're looking at pre-K-8. So I think the way I would like to start, unless anyone else has any objections, is start with questions.
I do just want, for the record as well, to indicate that we had opened after the meeting the online piece for comments, input, thoughts, questions, and we had 37 online submissions, and we had 2 hard copy submissions that were delivered. The board all received that as part of the packet and was asked to review that coming into tonight. No discussion related to that the discussion would happen here. So we did receive 39 online, or 37 online and 2 hard copy comments, thoughts, I guess input from residents. So I wanted that in the record.
Right. And we, as you know, we have provided them, they're part of the K meeting record for tonight's meeting. So I hope you've had a chance to review them and to kind of formulate reactions, questions, things that you would like to talk about before we move toward a decision.
I did review, and it wasn't always clear whether or not some indicated that they were present, some it was not clear, and some it was obvious that they weren't there.
Correct.
So, whatever next one.
And I think, going forward, depending on what decision we make tonight, going forward, there are certain elements of this record that I think we're going to want to make sure are part of our planning and thought process and communication process, so people understand very clearly, what decisions, how we're making our decisions, and how this is going to impact our district.
In reading all of this, the majority of what was mentioned was all taken into consideration during the several-month process.
Starting in March.
Right.
Big
And there were a few
surprises.
misunderstandings.
Yes.
Such as the big one being that why are we putting 4th and 5th graders on a bus or 5th graders on a bus with 8th graders when they have been doing that for years.
Yeah.
So, and it also was 4th graders and
Right.
without incident.
Right.
But that was, and the concern that enrollment decline is unique to Clinton, and it's not unique to Clinton. In fact, if you'd like to look up the U.S. Board of Education, they've done a study, and Connecticut happens to be one of the highest rate of decline in the country, along with the rest of the Northeast. So that's not unique to Clinton.
I think I also seem like a lot of people have issues about what's going to happen to the school, which I don't think we have anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So, this is something, and I know I've mentioned this before, and I don't mean to be a broken record at all, but when I, through this entire process, which I think, many people who saw me go through this process, you saw how difficult this was for me. I was kind of having to consider things that I wasn't all that thrilled to have to find the answers to and have the considerations for. But the one thing I kept coming back to is that the statute is very clear that part of our charge as a board is the buildings we oversee the buildings for the proper running and maintenance of our district. And part of the charge as set out by statute is that part of the board's responsibility is to look at how we're properly using those facilities. And if through this work we saw that we don't need the physical space that we have available to us, we then have an obligation to make decisions that bring us more in alignment with what our statutory responsibility is. So for me, when I was really struggling and feeling like, wow, this is such a, a monumentous decision, what I kept coming back to is, but what are we here to do? What does the law tell us we have to do? And that's part of it. That's part of our charge.
I tried to keep a tally as I was reading through the comments of the number of people who expressed the desire to not close Pierson at all or to do something different than what was recommended with the 4th and the 5th grade. And my count was 9 people of the 39 said they didn't want to close it at all. And 2 people said they would prefer that 4th and 5th grade be kept together. So out of 39 people, and the rest of the people either said they supported the recommendation that was made by the subcommittee or they were not explicit about their feelings, but they then expressed other concerns about what would happen to the building or things that they were hoping that the district would consider when reorganizing the classrooms, like treating 5th grade differently than how you would treat the rest of the middle school, or making sure that there's still recess for them or start time.
And that was discussed, and that was discussed.
Right.
But, so 9, so that's something else that I thought about was 9 out of the 39 people explicitly stated that they didn't want Pierson to close, but the rest of the people were either in complete support or neutral.
Right. What else?
I just don't know if we, I guess I'm in agreement with Lois on, the comments that I went through and commented myself on a lot of different responses, and a lot of it was redundant. There was a lot of interest in taking some of the funds to create a new line for a tag coordinator, which that again falls under the administration to task how we're going to reassign funds if that's what we choose
More
to do.
efficient and effective delivery of services, which was the other big thing for me, is how can we make sure we're maximizing the programming that we have in the most, fiscally prudent and efficient way possible.
I guess I have a question for like Mike and Kim and Catherine, who were not on the committee, and if you had questions that you're unsure of still, or you're comfortable with things, or...
Between presentations and other meetings that I had.
Because you did attend.
Yeah.
I just had a question, because I guess I was sick the night that we had the meeting, I wanted to go to it, but, so the 5th grade, most probably it's going to be like, it's like more like a separated, like, area, or they be like, or it's going to be 5th and 6th, that's like the 8th, and 2 different, like, kind of high schools.
I think that was going to be left up to the administration once they develop the programs, and how that was going to be handled. But during our discussion, that was addressed as far as it would be an ideal opportunity to look at the great possibilities that can be done now that we have a 5th grade and a 7th, 8th grade, and some of the unique things that can be done now along those lines with a 5th grade. And we use the analogy of the 5th grade, 6th grade academy, 7th, 8th grade academy, only because of those terms being familiar with the high school. And we threw that term around when we were discussing it. And some of the ideas that were being thrown out were kind of unique and exciting. So, but there again, that would be once a decision was made, whatever that decision may be, would be up to the administration to develop the programming that would correlate.
And that would be part of our commitment to communication as well, which is that once the decision's made, then we bring stakeholders together and say, okay, let's figure out what this looks like, which is part of the reason why we wanted the timing of this decision to come out the way that it did, so that we have this lead time. If the decision is to do it for next school year, we have this lead time to do the work that we need to do to make sure that it's thoughtful, thorough, and in the best interest of our children.
And that discussion of playground area for the fifth graders, they still need recess, and, that decision would be made if they get recess time, or do they need recess time, that still might be worked out.
Correct.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit.
It's changed a little
Yeah.
bit, but there's like a
Yeah.
But my kids
structure.
have never felt that that was even useful, like they just sit around and chit-chatted. and
Right,
decided
right,
they wanted to-
Right.
Exactly.
And there's similar
But-
considerations too for specials, lunch, we'll have those conversations as well as to what
And then
that
maybe
means.
a better use of time that they might enjoy more,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, that all has to be looked at.
yeah.
I guess another concern that a few people mentioned in the input was the time frame. Is it doable to get all of this done by the next school year if we're just at this moment making the decision of whether to even begin?
Which I think that we threw back and forth at nauseam at times. And I think our administrators assured us that we made a decision, they were up to the task. And that even the teachers or the staff at Pierson, I think at one point they said just with the Band-Aid off, that we're going to do it. There have been so many changes now to do it because it obviously, the numbers are only going to get smaller and smaller. And you certainly don't want to have, I hate to use the word, but a ghost school, that there's so few students in the building. I mean, yes, they'd be using the space, but the classes, the numbers are getting smaller and smaller to have so few classes in the building. If we waited another whole year.
And I think to that point, I think that's part of the, I know that was always kind of my lens, but I think that's also kind of the commitment of everyone making the decision, is that we would only consider the 1920 school year if we thought it was prudent to do so. Because again, my whole mantra for this whole thing is we can either make sure that change happens that we're comfortable with, or we, what I'm saying, that will be in the best interest of the district, or we can let it happen to us, and then we're not doing our jobs. And that's, but I hear that, and I'm kind of like, I won't admit that I'm like, oh, rainbows and butterflies, and, but I do think that the fact that we are considering it is a reflection of the fact that we are considering it in a thoughtful and
I think in talking about that with the committee members as well, there are a variety of, I think, things happening in the district that did also add to the conversation. So it's an aggressive timeline. Having a decision made now allows us, realistically, if we were 2 months in and made the decision in January, it's much harder. I think we can make it happen, and we're pretty confident that we can, and we can do it right. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be a busy year. We have a lot to do. We have schedules to look at. We have culture and climate decisions. We have historical transitions in terms of preserving Pierson and those traditions and Pierson as a school. We have the logistics of just packing and moving and closing out a school. We have a couple of we have the transition for the 4th and 5th graders and how we do that and how we do that well for kids and for parents. Those 4th graders just went through a transition. They will have another, but how can we have both grades kind of transition and prepare them? We have space considerations at Eliot. It gets to your question, Catherine, a little bit about how do we structure the school and where kids are located. We have a couple of roofing projects that are expected to begin in the summer of 2020. So that factored in as well, that those projects, if they're happening in that summer, and that's the summer that we're moving and transitioning, that's a difficult thing to do. It will keep people out of the building, it'll, cause some disruption. We've been working on this. The middle school also has their large class leaving in 8th grade, and really without this decision, we would be looking at restructuring teams again, right? We did this transition this year, we would have to restructure teams, and then the following year potentially have a different structure. So in looking at kind of multiple transitions, projects in the district, the readiness, I think, to be able to move forward and look at staff in this new structure and allocate staff appropriately. Otherwise, that interim year will mean some staff splits, perhaps, some transitions that we're just gonna have one more year. And so it's kind of our commitment, I think, as an administrative team when we've talked about this. If the committee was saying, let's just do it, we should just move forward, and we didn't think we could do it, I would be voicing that right now. Any transition of this magnitude is big, but the team is committed to it. I think once the decision's made and we're moving in that direction, our staff will be engaged in that program planning, and we have some timelines sketched out. So I'm confident that we can do this and we can do it well. And it will be aggressive and it'll be a busy year. But I think it's probably the right timing for all of those reasons to really get our staff and our students settled and have that opportunity to restructure programming and move forward and stay focused on what we're really all about.
What else? I think we've covered.
Some comments I saw about putting more kids at the high grades at the high school, but that doesn't really make much sense at all, especially since the 8th grade is such a large class.
Class, that's exactly, I'm like,
Yeah,
correct.
we're gonna.
At least not at
class
this juncture.
and
At
pack them
this
in.
juncture, I don't think
But
it's gonna work.
I am way more concerned about 8th graders starting high school, the high school experience ahead of time, more so than 5th graders starting the middle school, middle, upper, school experience. And just the exposure at the high school is a little difficult. I prefer to have it on the 5th grade end and the 8th grade getting bumped up. And that was something, there were the folks who wanted the pre-K through 5 model. We talked a lot about transportation issues with that too, and then we'd have a imbalance of transportation and the bus needs. We have to be bus heavy on the Joel run and not so much on the Eliot and Morgan run.
Plus
Would be really
in like
inefficient.
3 years' time, 5 years' time, that we would be back to having that disparity between the schools anyway,
Right.
and then it wouldn't really serve our overall goal.
That 50-year model is a bus supposed to do that.
Of course, right,
More
yeah.
and more switching to it,
Yeah, all of our neighbors have it.
Yeah.
My nephew, he's on it.
Right.
5-8.
They have it in Branford and Westbrook.
Yeah, Westbrook's 5-8, Saybrook's 4-8, Killingworth,
Yeah, right.
Killingworth is 4-8, Saybrook's 5-8, Madison, Guilford have 5-6, and then 7 and 8. So it's not
And so we're surrounded by it. Certainly not unique to us. Right.
I'm trying to think what else. There are some budgetary concerns that wanting hard numbers. There are a couple of people wanting hard numbers, but I think until we know exactly what staff is going where and who retires and who can fill what roles and whose benefits are whose, and same thing with utilities. Okay, we're closing Pierson and you're gonna capture some electric and water, but we're also gonna increase it at both of the school levels, not to probably the degree that they're used there, but there will be an increase. And I think until, just like at Morgan, we thought we were gonna have a much lower utility bill, and it was the opposite. It was, yeah, but you know,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
no,
these
it's
predictions that
right,
you
right.
make, and then you're drastically wrong, and it's like, ugh. And, you know, I think you gave fair estimates. You and Carolyn are always on the numbers, so I trust the numbers that you provided versus what people can speculate on their own, on the budget part.
So after 1 year in.
Yeah, we'll have a better picture.
Exactly.
And this budget process this year will be reflective of the changes that are happening.
Right.
Which is the other reason why we wanted this timeline, so that we could really make very sound budgetary decisions when putting together.
But the question will become when we create that new budget, you know, okay, are we keeping the budget as it is and, you know, putting that money towards something else that we're saving, but I'm pretty sure that's not what the taxpayers want in closing the school.
Right.
But,
I don't think I need any more questions answered at this point, even out of the
But again,
long time.
March seems very far away at this point.
Yeah.
Anybody else? It's okay. All right, then I would like to entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the Clinton Community Committee on Facility Needs to close Pierson Elementary School and to realign our schools beginning in the 2019-2020 school year so that Joel Elementary School would consist of grades pre-kindergarten through 4th grade, and Eliot Middle School would consist of grades 5 through 8.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. I would also like to entertain a motion to authorize the superintendent and administration to develop and implement the transition plan related to program, schedule, and moving, as well as the closure of Pierson School and return of the building to the town.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Just before we continue on with the agenda, I would just like to offer my personal appreciation both to all of you and to everyone who served on the CCC. I knew going into it that I was asking you to take on a Herculean task that nobody was really happy to do. And I completely appreciate that, and I appreciate your bravery. I appreciate your willingness to ask questions that were not comfortable, to kind of make sure that, you know, your voice and concerns were part of the conversation, and now to join us, because this is kind of, you know, this is kind of where it starts. I don't want to say the work starts here, because we have been at it for many months, but, you know, now's where really making sure that these are the best decisions for our students and our district begins now. Right. Well, in this context.
Yes.
That sounded like we were not always being mindful. That's not what I mean to say. But in this context, our work to be thoughtful, to be thorough, to be prudent, and most of all to be the nurturers of our students that we have committed to being begins now. So I thank you all for taking this journey with me and to this point. And sorry, your work's not done. We have more to do. I'm sorry. I know I'm sorry. You have to say. That's how it goes. All right. So now on to the rest of our business.
This video provided as a public service by Kirk Carr, the Kirkster. Thank you for watching.